Hey guys, sorry, I just got in from impersonating federal law enforcement. Because didn't you know that they're required to wear face masks for no discernible reason, even though they didn't want to do that during COVID to protect themselves and other people? Okay, so in the wake of groups of people dressed in non-matching costumes that can be bought on Amazon for between, $25 and $50 and rounding people up and pushing them into unmarked vans, the people of Los Angeles are rising up. Personally, I think if you have a signed warrant, then you should have no problem showing your face, your badge, the warrant, and arresting not just the people that are possibly here illegally, but the people that are making a market for the illegal activity. The business owners who are knowingly hiring people who are just trying to support their families. So the people of LA, in the wake of this, are protesting. People in certain media outlets are reporting violent protests, and certainly some of it is violent. Like when an unmarked car ran down this pedestrian, or when an international journalist was shot with a rubber bullet in the leg, or when a CNN crew and journalist were detained by riot police. Now, I'm not there, and I can't say how I would react if I were. But I'd like to think that if I saw, an unarmed woman or children being thrown into the back of a van by a group of men with their faces covered, that I would assume that she is being assaulted and is the victim. Because if we're being honest, that is in fact the most likely scenario. And I'd like to think that I would help. Just to note, I'm recording this on June 14th, and today in Minnesota, in the early hours of the morning, a Minnesota State Representative, Melissa Hortman, was shot and killed in her home along with her husband by a man impersonating a police officer. State Senator John Hoffman and his wife were also shot in their home, but at least at this time, at the time of my recording, are hospitalized and expected to recover. The suspect was not only dressed as a police officer, but according to the real police, when they arrived on the scene of the Hortman home, a vehicle that looked exactly like an SUV squad car, equipped with emergency lights, was parked outside. The suspect emerged from the home wearing a tactical vest, badge, and other equipment, and when officers confronted the individual, he immediately fired at them and then retreated back into the home. It's clear to the real police that this individual used the trust of his costume and fake badge to gain entry into these homes and carry out his heinous acts. Now, back to Los Angeles. Now, despite the president's pardoning of over 1,000 January 6th rioters who violently stormed the U.S. Capitol, breaking windows, scaling walls, rubbing their own feces on the walls of the building, beating police officers, sometimes with fire extinguishers, sometimes with the flag poles that they were using for Confederate flags, the president didn't hasten the call up of any National Guard units on that day to protect the police officers, staffers, and elected officials who were being beaten and trapped inside the Capitol. However, in California, the president has illegally called up the Marines in direct conflict with the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, which states that the military cannot conduct civilian law enforcement. The act was updated in 1956, 1981, and 2021 to include not just the Army, but the Air Force, Navy, Marines, and yes, even the Space Force. The Coast Guard is left out because its mission is maritime law enforcement. And the Insurrection Act does state that military can be called up for such a task if Congress authorizes it, which has not happened in this case. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom of California was and is within his rights to call up the National Guard because the Posse Comitatus Act does not cover Air and Army National Guard. But it's really in the governor's purview to do this. And because Governor Newsom has not done so, President Trump has decided to federalize the California National Guard, which is also technically illegal, but the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled in President Trump's favor. So far, so fine. However, there have been verified photos of those troops that have been called up, sleeping on concrete loading docks, without bedding because no arrangements for lodging were made. And they were sent without any funding for food. And I also read that there is an issue of them currently not being paid for this deployment. I'm sure it will get worked out and there will be back pay, but as of right now, they're not being paid for their deployment. So despite the $45 million birthday, I meant awesome support of the military parade, it seems pretty clear that President Trump still believes our service members to be suckers and losers. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. See you next time on Comm 101.